Right, well, we're going to carry on that tradition of storytelling with the harp. The ancient bards would gather around the peat fire with all of the folk of the household and tell the stories of the ancient times and of the families and the glory that was the Celtic people. But here's a story that kind of tells about where some of the music comes from. And it can come from lots of different places. It can come from your relatives, your friends, your teachers. We don't use sheet music, so most of the music that we play comes through that tradition, the oral tradition. So here's a story called The Fairy Reel.
Now, a long time ago in Ireland, when there is more magic and not so many machines as there is today, there was a wonderful piper named Brian Flynn. Now this Brian, he had such quick ears and such clever fingers. He'd hear a tune just the once and he'd have it. And when he was a lad growing up, you know, he learned all the tunes of his dad and his granddad and his uncles and his aunts and all the neighbors round. Till by the time he was a young man, he figured he'd learnt all the tunes there were to know. And soon it got to the point where nobody in the whole county would think of having a wedding or a funeral or a party or a wake without they would invite Brian Flynn to come play his pipes. Now this one time, Brian had been away off at the far end of the county, you know, playing for a party. It was a cracker of a party. There's 3 whole days of singing and dancing and food and drink and telling stories. Oh, it was a wonderful party, you know. But he was some tuckered out after that party. And he's late at night after that 3rd day of playing, you know. He's walking home, Shank's mare. And he's going down the road, he's thinking, you know, there's a shortcut path through the wood. And if I take that shortcut path through the wood, I'll be home in my nice warm bed just that much the sooner. So he's walking down the road and he comes to that shortcut path and he takes his foot off the road and down through the forest he goes. Oh, it's dark in there, you know, and there's rustling in the bushes. He doesn't want to think what might be there. And you can hear the insects making their little sounds, you know, and every now and then an owl flies by. Then all of a sudden he thought he heard some music. Right there in the wood. Stopped right where he was in his tracks. He listened. And it wasn't a tune. He wasn't familiar with this tune. Now, Brian, he thought he'd known all the tunes there were to know. So he was mighty intrigued. So real quiet like he makes his way up through the bracken to where he can see there's a glow on the other side of this little hill. He's real careful because who'd be making music in the wood at night? Could be gypsies, could be robbers. So he climbs up that hill through the bracken, and when he gets to the top of the hill, there's this big tree there, this big oak tree. And he looks out from behind that oak tree, and what do you think he see but a band of fairies having a dance? And the lady fairies, they was all wearing gowns the colour of the flowers in the springtime. And the gentlemen fairies, they was all wearing breeches and waistcoats the colour of the leaves in the autumn. And right in the centre, on an old rowan stump, sat a fairy in a blue gown playing a wee gold harp, the most beautiful tune that Brian had ever heard. Well, you know, he opened up his ear to catch that tune, and he was leaning forward to hear a little better when he lost his balance and tumbled head over heels into the circle. The light goes out like that, and everything is quiet. Oh, thought Brian, I'm in for it now. They're going to turn me into Toad or a newt or something. But nothing happened. They're still quiet. So after a few minutes, he felt around to find his hat. He'd lost his hat, you know. He felt around till he found his hat, jams it on his head, and he's back up that hill, down to the path, out to the road, and home just as quick as he can go. Not because he's frightened, mind ya. Well, not much. And when he gets to his house, you know, doesn't even take off his coat and hat. He just lights a candle, puts it on the table, and takes out his pipes to play that tune. Well, Brian, he worked at that tune for an hour. He worked at it for a second hour. He worked at it until the sun was almost coming up. And finally he decided there must be magic in that tune and only fairies can play it. So with great discouragement, he put away his pipes And he took off his coat and he hung it on the peg, and he took off his hat to hang it up. And when he took off his hat, there's this little ding. And he took his candle and he looked down on the floor and he found this wee gold ring, too small for any human person to wear. Ach, thought Brian, this must belong to the fairies. I better take it back. It's not safe hanging on to fairy gold. They're awful tricksy, those fairies. So as soon as he'd had some rest, he put it in his waistcoat pocket, and he's back down the road, and back down the path, and up over the hill, and down to where he found that rowan stump. And he takes the ring and he puts it on the stump. So far, so good. He thinks, I probably ought to apologize to the fairies, just to be on the safe side. So he can't see any fairies, of course. He says, well, excuse me, fairies. I just wanted to apologize for spoiling your party last night, but your music was so beautiful I couldn't help myself. And I brought your ring back. It's right there on the stump. And I hope you all have a nice day. And then he turned around to go, and right behind him was that fairy with the blue gown. She smiles and she says, now, Brian, that was a very nice thing you did, apologizing like that. And bringing my ring back shows you're indeed an honest man. I think I should grant you one wish. Now, Brian, some folk they wish for health and long life, and some folk they wished for gold and riches. What'll it be for you, Brian Flynn? He says, I don't want to know none of them things. I just want to know that tune. She says, all right, Brian, you go on home now, and when you take out your pipes to play, that tune will be right under your fingers. So Brian went home just as fast as he could, and he takes out his pipes to play. Oh, Brian, he loved that tune, He played it 3-4 hours that first day. First chance he got to play it at a party, he played it, and his friends, they liked the tune, and those that were musicians, they learned the tune, and they taught it to their friends, and some had children who were musically inclined, and when they grew up, they were playing the tune, and they taught it to their children, and so on down through the years. Until a while ago, some of our friends played that tune for us, and now we've played it for you. And when you hear that tune, the fairy reel, you're hearing just a wee bit of magic from old Ireland.